Right, I want to get more reaction now with regards to our breaking news story, the application for a permanent stay of prosecution by former President Jacob Zuma and his co-accused French arms company Thales has been dismissed with costs in the KwaZulu-Natal High Court in Pietermaritzburg. Ayanda Mhlongo is covering the story for us. Ayanda, a very good morning to you once again.
Good morning to you once again, Blaine. Good morning to our viewers. And as you're saying there, Blaine, continuing, of course, to get a reaction. The people that we have spoken to earlier on live, we spoke to one of the organizers of the support for the former president, Mr. Nkosenja Shezi. There were also some ANC leaders that went through as they were making their way out of the court. But just to sum it up from their comments that we were able to get from them, Blaine, disappointment by this ruling today by the Pietermaritzburg High Court. But they have said, as disappointed as they are going to continue to show their support. In fact, saying that to come Tuesday the 15th, when the former president is back here in court on that for the start of the trial, that they're going to be mobilizing in their numbers. They want people from not only the province of KwaZulu-Natal but other provinces to make their way here as a show of force, as a show of support for the former president. Now, earlier on, we were also speaking to our legal expert, Advocate Byron Jackson, on the proceedings, of course, on the ruling here today. He's now had the opportunity to quickly skim through or go through the judgment. The judge is coming in for about 5 minutes, so he had predicted that it was going to be quite short, that we're going to be inside a court for at least 5 to 10 minutes, and indeed Justice Mnguni coming in, delivering that order. Let me bring in now our legal expert, Advocate Jackson. Advocate, again, thank you for your time. You've had a little bit of time now to go through the judgment, and sort of what we were wanting here was the reasonings. First, it was a unanimous judgment by the three judges, but how did they get to that decision?
Unfortunately, Ayanda, I hadn't had an opportunity to go through the full reasons through the judgment. But what I can say is, and you've alluded to it quite correctly, it was a unanimous judgment. In the court's judgment, the court made 6 orders, and all 6 orders were adverse to both the former president as well as Thales. In the result, it was an outright win for the state, being led by its senior counsel Wim Trendgrove and his team. The reality now is that should the former president Thales wish to ask for leave to appeal, which I am of the view that they will, the daunting reality of that they have to ask it from the very same judges who have unanimously declined their application.
And what are their prospects? I mean, you're saying that you've gone through the orders. This was a victory for the estate. What are the chances of them being granted this leave to appeal?
Well, the appeal procedure is a completely different animal on its own. When a court's sitting hearing a leave for appeal, there's other considerations that would come to the fore. Same being, and not limited to, whether they are of the opinion that a different court could find otherwise, or whether there are other compelling reasons as to why leave should be granted to the appellant. Further to that, should they for some reason not be successful in leave, they still have the recourse of petitioning the Supreme Court of Appeal. I can only take it as far as saying that, of course, this court sitting hearing this application unanimously dismissed their application, but not all is lost if we take it to appeal stage, because there are other considerations that will be considered, put forward and considered by the court. So it's not a foregone conclusion. Yes.
Advocate, for those who might say, and I'm taking this from what was said by the state, where they said that the blame for the delays could not solely be put on the state, as was submitted by both defense counsels for Mr. Zuma and Thales. People saying, well, he's appealing or intends to appeal, and this is another way of him delaying the eventuality of this risk getting to court. But of course, he does have a right to appeal.
He has every right to appeal. Any litigant in his position would have that right. It's encapsulated in the Act, which is law of this country, as well as the rules of this court. He quite rightly so. He has the right to appeal. In relation to your former comment, when we heard Senior Counsel Trengrove go through the chronology, you couldn't ignore that the former president also took some the adjournments that happened in the matter. They were at his request. We'll recall that when he changed legal representation, he had two adjournments, and especially the last one, which endured, if I'm not mistaken, from April to November of last year. So those were facts, and it would prove on the decision that the Senior Counsel Trengrove's submissions were quite correct in that regard, well, taking the outcome into consideration.
And Advocate, just before coming on air, you and I were just speaking about the costs, that the ruling, of course, is in favor of the state. Obviously must have disappointed the former president, but also there is this issue of the cost, which is also quite serious.
Yes, where the court ordered costs, the court ordered costs in corporation of two counsel were employed. So that would mean where two advocates were employed by either party, the losing parties would have to pay those costs.
These are quite substantial.
Litigation in the superior court is always an expensive endeavor. Having said that, if they do intend appealing, those costs would be held in abeyance pending the outcome of the leave to appeal, and if that is turned, then those costs would follow to them. So it's not over yet. It's definitely not over yet. Yeah,
it's not over yet. Of course, we're back on the 15th, but you also said that the former president, his co-accused Thales, they also have 15 days in which to lodge an appeal.
That's correct. They have 15 days in terms of the uniform rules of court. Logically, the holding date, which being the 15th, is within those days. So it would follow that if they do intend asking for leave to appeal, that there's every probability that the matter will not proceed on Tuesday.
Advocate, thank you very much for your time and joining us from this morning. It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for helping us, Advocate Byron Jackson there, Blaine. Of course, he's been with us from this morning, taking us through the court proceedings here today. And of course, as we wrap things up here outside the Pietermaritzburg High Court, we will be back on the 15th when former President Jacob Zuma and his co-accused, the French arms company Thales, they'll be back here for the trial.
All right, Ayanda, thank you very much indeed. Once again, Ayanda Mhlongo coming to us live from Pietermaritzburg.